about responsibility. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe and let's talk about how irresponsible our government is being with the Abrego Garcia case. So, yesterday, I'm going to read you the written order that Judge Sinis issued yesterday. And then today, just at the deadline of when Judge Sinis ordered the daily briefing, did the court receive an answer. But there's something interesting going on. First of all, remember that this was done under the auspices of the immigration services. And now, because it has been, you'll see that it has been shifted to the State Department because you're dealing with another country where this person is, over whom the United States has constructive jurisdiction. Okay? So, with that in mind, I'm going to read you Judge Sinis's order and point out parts that I want you to sort of think about, and then go on to the reply by the government and how that shifts responsibility from getting direct answers from the immigration, from DOJ, from ICE to the State Department. So they are delaying the matter in a way by shifting the weight from one department to another. I just wanted to warn you about that first before starting the order. Obviously, it's not part of this order. The order is straightforward. The court finds that defendants have failed to comply with this court's order for reasons discussed during today's status conference. In advance of the conference, the court had directed defendants to file a supplemental declaration from an individual with personal knowledge addressing the following: the current physical location and custodial status of Abrego Garcia. 2, what steps, if any, defendants have taken to facilitate Abrego Garcia's immediate return to the United States. And 3, what additional steps defendants will take and when to facilitate his return. Defendants have made no meaningful effort to comply. Instead, they complain that the order is unreasonable and impracticable and involves sensitive country-specific considerations wholly inappropriate for judicial review. Remember, this is about the judicial review that is due to Abrego Garcia because he has the right to due process of law because he was in the United States legally, which the government has conceded, and also conceded that he was removed by an administrative error. So there is judicial review, and there is no information about Abrego Garcia, and even if it is, the judge ordered in the previous order that you seal the information that needs to be sealed. So, during the hearing, back to the order, during the hearing, the court posed straightforward questions, including where is Abrego Garcia right now, what steps the defendants taken to facilitate his return while the court's initial order on injunctive relief was in effect. Defendant's counsel responded that he could not answer the questions and at times suggested that defendants have withheld such information from him. As a result, the counsel could not confirm and thus did not advance any evidence that defendants had done anything to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. This remained defendants' position even after this court reminded them that the Supreme Court of the United States expressly affirmed that this court, meaning Judge Sinis's court, affirmed this court's authority to require the government facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. From this court's perspective, defendants' contention that they could not answer these basic questions absent some non-specific vetting has yet to take place provides no basis for their lack of compliance. So the district court is not happy and points out that the government has failed to comply with the court's order once already, but still giving due regard, as the Supreme Court put it, to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. Accordingly, so the new order that begins today, which would be April 12th, and then accordingly, it is thereby ordered that beginning April 12th, 2025, and continuing each day thereafter until further order of the court, defendants shall file daily on or before 5 p.m. Eastern Time a declaration made by an individual with personal knowledge as to any information regarding 1. The current physical location and custodial status of Abrego Garcia. 2. What steps, if any, defendants have taken to facilitate his immediate return to the United States. And 3. What additional steps defendants will take and when to facilitate his return. A follow-up in-person hearing will be scheduled for Tuesday, April 15th, 4 p.m. So, and then there's a timeline which says, to the extent that plaintiffs seek relief, their motion can be filed by 5 p.m. on 5 p.m. today, which has passed, and defendants will have the opportunity to respond by 5 p.m. tomorrow, Sunday, and so that's 24 hours. Again, that is due regard. The complaint previously of non-compliance was that it was impracticable and it was unreasonable. So the court has given them more days. Remember, though, that Abrego Garcia is suffering in a terrorist prison in El Salvador because he was removed for being here illegally, despite the fact that there was a judge's order that protected his legal status to be in the United States and not to be sent to El Salvador, which is exactly where he is. So it was an immigration issue. He was picked up by ICE. Those are the Department of Homeland Security manages that. And then the reply, so the answer that the government gets today at 5 comes from this man by the name of Michael G. Kosak. He says, I am senior bureau official in the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, United States Department of State. So all of a sudden, this has just jumped from the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of ICE, and the immigration department. I think that's ICE, but it has shifted to the State Department. So I think the purpose of that is to remove Abrego Garcia further away from American jurisdiction, because now you're dealing with the Department of State, which has the primary responsibility of dealing with foreign governments. Okay, and we'll see that reflected in what Mr. Kosak says. So I am aware that the lawsuit has been filed seeking the return of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia to the United States from El Salvador. I provide this declaration based on my personal knowledge, reasonable inquiry, and information obtained from other State Department employees. Why not from the Department of Homeland Security, which was responsible for sending him there in the first place? Remember, Abrego Garcia remains a legal resident of the United States in the District of Maryland because that is the effective immigration court order that the Supreme Court upheld when it upheld the order of Judge Sinis that they would have to, that there is due process of law and they need to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia based on Judge Sinis's order. And Judge Sinis directed the government to do that. They did not comply with that order. So now Judge Sinis has issued a second order with a more relaxed timeline, despite the fact that Abrego Garcia is being held without due process of law and in a cruel and unusual environment and being forced to endure cruel and unusual punishment because of that. So that I want to keep reminding you about that. So then Mr. Cossack goes to say, it is my understanding based on official reporting from our embassy in San Salvador that Abrego Garcia is currently being held in the Terrorism Confinement Center in El Salvador. He is alive and secure in that facility. He is detained, so he is alive and secure in that facility is at least some information. And then we go into, he is detained pursuant to the sovereign domestic authority of El Salvador. No, he is not detained pursuant to the sovereign domestic authority of El Salvador. He is detained pursuant to a contract made by the executive branch of the U.S. Department to ship immigration detainees to a foreign country for $6 million. So that's a contract with the United States government and El Salvador, which is what governs him being there. He is not there. He is not there pursuant. He may be there under the sovereign domestic authority of El Salvador, but he is not there pursuant to it because El Salvador did not pursue Abrego Garcia as far as we know, as far as the court knows so far. It was the United States government that pursued Abrego Garcia and then illegally shipped him to El Salvador. And then he says that, I declare this is true under penalty of perjury. And so we are left with this information about Garcia and the irresponsibility and the stonewalling of the United States government and the shuffling of departments is unconscionable. It should outrage every single person. So now I'll skip from, the Abrego Garcia case because I've been keeping a close eye on this case because it is important for all the other detainees who are there, who were in the United States and residing in the United States and therefore within the jurisdiction of the United States, was taken by the United States, therefore within the jurisdiction of the United States, and kept in an inhumane, cruel, and unusual environment under a contract between the United States government and the government of El Salvador. Not pursuant to El Salvador, at least according to the information that we have right now. So that is the update that we need to know about every single day, and I'll come back with it again tomorrow. In the private sector, there is this, I'll just tell you the story. So Bill Maher, who is a talk show host, everybody knows who Bill Maher is. I don't know why I'm explaining who he is. Was invited to the White House to sit for dinner with Kid Rock and Donald Trump. He had a tour. He had a great time. He came and gave his sort of story of it. And then he had Steve Bannon on his show, which is fine. Then Steve Bannon went on to say in the interview that the 2020 election was stolen from Trump. And Bill did not push back. He said, okay. I understand the reasoning behind inviting opposite viewpoints, but the truth matters, and Bill Maher should know better. And he's not, I'm nobody. He's never going to hear what I have to say, but, it was his responsibility to check that big lie right there. So that was irresponsible of Bill Maher, to whom millions listen to. And I think that people in positions like Bill Maher is in should exercise restraint and some level of responsibility, take some responsibility for the speech that happens on their show. Because if you just let Steve Bannon say that the 2020 election was stolen from him and your response is okay, instead of saying no, that is a lie, and then moving on, that little much from an American should be expected. So, with that said, I'd like to tell you to please like and subscribe my work. Check out the other videos. Please share and subscribe. I'm a one-man show, and I come out every day to talk about these things that I think are important to us. And today it's about taking responsibility and how our government and some media figures are not taking responsibility for their actions, and instead of being productive towards justice, they are getting in the way of truth and justice. With that said, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.